My name is Ibrahim Traoré. I am the president of Burkina Faso. I speak today not as a conqueror of problems and not as a man who believes he has already found the answers. I speak as someone who carries a heavy responsibility on his shoulders in a land that has carried suffering on its back for generations. Burkina Faso is a small country on the map, but a vast country in dignity. Like many nations across the Sahel and across Africa, we were born into promises that were never fully kept. We were told freedom would bring prosperity. We were told independence would bring justice. Instead, too often, we inherited fragile institutions, wounded trust, and a quiet exhaustion that lives inside ordinary people. I have seen farmers work soil that gives less each year. I have seen mothers count food in silence. I have seen young men with strong arms and sharp minds stare into the future and see nothing waiting for them. These are not statistics. These are faces I cannot forget. Leadership, from the outside, looks like authority. From the inside, it feels like a constant moral test. Every decision creates winners and losers. Every silence speaks as loudly as a speech. And over time, fatigue settles into the bones. You continue moving, but something inside you grows numb. On one ordinary evening, after finishing a long day of work, I returned to my room. No cameras, no advisors, no speeches to prepare, only tiredness. I did not kneel to pray. I did not ask for signs. I lay down as any exhausted man would, and sleep took me without ceremony. That is when it happened. Not in a church, not during a fast, not in a moment of spiritual preparation, but in the most ordinary human weakness, fatigue. And in that sleep, I was shown something that shook me more deeply than any battlefield report or intelligence briefing ever had. What I saw forced me to question not only the future of Burkina Faso, but the kind of man I am becoming while trying to lead it. The place where I found myself did not resemble heaven as people imagine it, nor did it resemble any land I know. There were no walls, no horizon, no sky as such. The space felt open, yet enclosed. Silent, yet heavy with meaning. It was neither bright nor dark. It simply was. I was not afraid at first. I was alert, fully conscious in a way that felt sharper than waking life. I knew I was dreaming, yet everything carried the weight of reality. The ground beneath me did not shake, but my certainty did. Then he was there. Not descending, not appearing in light, not announced. He stood as if he had always been present, and I had only just learned how to see. Jesus did not look as artists have painted him. There was no halo, no radiance meant to impress. His presence was calm, unprotected by spectacle. His eyes were not severe, they were steady, observing, not accusing. He did not introduce himself. He did not ask me to kneel. He spoke as one speaks to an equal in dignity, but not in responsibility. "You believe your country is free," he said. It was not a question, it was not an accusation. I felt an instinctive need to defend myself, to explain policies, constraints, enemies, history. But none of that came out. Words felt unnecessary. Explanations felt small. Instead, I felt something more uncomfortable than fear. Recognition. He did not tell me I was evil. He did not tell me I was righteous. He did not predict punishment or reward. He did something far more difficult. He allowed me to see, not symbols, not metaphors, reality stripped of excuses. What followed was not a vision of miracles, but of consequences, not a sermon, but a mirror. And once that mirror was lifted, there was no turning away from what it revealed. The scene changed without movement. I did not walk, I did not turn, yet suddenly Burkina Faso stood before me, not as a map, not as borders, as a living body. I saw cities rising quickly, faster than trust. Glass buildings reflected the sun, modern and impressive. Government complexes stood tall, surrounded by clean pavement and guarded gates. Hotels welcomed foreign guests with polished smiles and quiet luxury. But just beyond the edge of that shine, I saw something else. Families living under rusted sheets of metal. Children barefoot on dust that never cools. Elderly men sleeping beside roads that lead nowhere for them. The distance between power and people was not measured in kilometers. It was measured in indifference. I felt a tightening in my chest. I had seen these things before in fragments, reports, visits, briefings. But here, I was forced to see them at once, without distraction. Then I saw the ground itself open. Gold, phosphate, cotton. Wealth drawn from the earth with speed and precision. Trucks moved day and night. Contracts were signed in quiet rooms. Numbers changed hands without faces attached to them. I searched for the people. I did not see them benefiting. I asked without speaking where all of it was going. Jesus did not answer directly. he showed me something else. Classrooms. Children sat in rows, reciting lessons perfectly. They read what was placed before them. They wrote what was expected of them. They obeyed. They were praised for silence, for discipline, for not asking questions that disturbed the order. I felt a chill. These children are learning how to survive, he said softly, not how to be free. Then I saw time begin to move faster. Leaders came and went, promises were spoken with conviction, oaths were taken with hands on sacred books, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changed. The nation was no longer led, it was managed. Every crisis was met with reaction, not vision. Every failure was explained as necessity. Long-term thinking disappeared beneath short-term survival. Decisions were made not to build the future, but to protect positions. The law remained written, but it no longer lived. I watched a poor man taken away for a small offense. His fear was immediate, his punishment swift. Then I saw a wealthy man accused of far greater harm. His case moved slowly. Investigations were announced. Delays followed. Silence settled in. Justice became conditional. Truth became flexible. Then came the most unsettling image. I saw leaders who no longer believed in their own words, men and women who had once entered public service with intention, now calculating only how to remain seated. Power was no longer a tool, it was a shield. I felt myself growing defensive again. These are not monsters, I wanted to say. These are people under pressure, this is how systems work. Jesus looked at me, not with anger, but with clarity. Beneath every tyranny, he said, there is a moment of agreement. That sentence stayed with me. I was then shown the origin of the collapse. Corruption did not arrive as evil. It arrived as practicality. A small payment to speed a process, a quiet favor to maintain stability, a compromise to avoid conflict. Each step felt reasonable. Each step was explained as survival. Everyone does it, the voices said. And slowly no one remembered how it started. Betrayal was renamed cooperation. Silence was renamed wisdom. Fear was disguised as intelligence. I watched as people learned to lower their voices, then their expectations, then their conscience. The most frightening revelation followed. There was no foreign oppressor in sight. No flag, no army. The faces enforcing injustice looked familiar. They spoke the same languages. They shared the same history. They were brothers restraining brothers, citizens controlling citizens. Burkina Faso was no longer being dominated from outside. It was being consumed from within. I felt shame rise in me, not personal guilt, but collective sorrow. Then Jesus said something I was not prepared to hear. A nation can survive poverty, he said, but it cannot survive the normalization of betrayal. I saw people hearing lies so often that they stopped reacting. Not because they believed them, but because outrage had become too expensive. When truth no longer hurts, collapse has already begun. I wanted to look away. I could not. This is not fate, he said. This is trajectory. And then he showed me something else. A single decision. One leader refusing a contract that would enrich him but burden a generation. One teacher encouraging a question instead of suppressing it. One citizen choosing integrity when silence would be safer. Small acts. Daily acts. Acts that looked insignificant. These moments, he said, are where the future is decided. I understood then what terrified me most. The danger was not sudden evil. It was gradual surrender. And the tyrant, he showed me, is not born from cruelty. He is born from compromise. What I was shown next was not a disaster. It was not violence. It was not collapse. It was something far more persuasive. I was shown myself. Not as I am now, but as I could become. I stood in a room filled with advisors. They spoke calmly, confidently, with concern carefully measured. Their words were reasonable. Their arguments were logical. None of them sounded corrupt. None of them sounded cruel. That is what made it dangerous. The first temptation came dressed as responsibility. Mr. President, one voice said, this contract is not perfect, but it will stabilize the economy. Jobs will be created. Opposition will quiet down. You cannot afford moral purity when the nation needs calm. I felt the weight of it immediately, the pressure of unrest, the fear of chaos, the knowledge that instability punishes the poor first. The compromise sounded compassionate. I was shown the document. The numbers looked impressive. Growth projections, infrastructure promises, development language polished to perfection, and buried beneath it, clauses that would drain resources quietly, legally, for decades. I hesitated. Refuse it, a voice inside me whispered. and you may lose allies. Accept it, and you may lose yourself. Jesus did not interrupt. He allowed me to wrestle. Then I saw the future branching. In one path I signed, applause followed, international praise, stability for a time, but slowly, debt accumulated, dependency deepened. Decisions became constrained by obligations I had agreed to under pressure. In the other path, I refused. Markets reacted, criticism surged, allies withdrew their smiles, but something else happened. Trust began to grow among ordinary people. Not immediately, not loudly, quietly. The second temptation came wearing the face of unity. I was shown unrest, protests, anger, division along religious and regional lines. Advisors urged firmness. Crack down now, they said. If you show weakness, the state will fracture. Order must come before dialogue. The logic was clean. Fear was real. History supported the argument. I imagined how easily authority could silence noise, how quickly order could be restored. And then I was shown the cost. Children watching their parents humiliated, communities learning that force replaces listening, silence imposed, not chosen. Force can produce quiet, Jesus said, but it cannot produce peace. I saw that every act of suppression planted seeds, seeds that would grow into resentment, then resistance, then justification for more force. A cycle without end. The third temptation was the most subtle. It came as exhaustion. I saw myself years later, older, tired, still standing but carrying the weight of unending struggle. Advisors suggested small personal protections. Secure your future, they said. You have sacrificed enough, a quiet arrangement, a safety net, you deserve rest. The argument pierced me. What leader does not long for relief? What human being does not want assurance after sacrifice? I saw how easily one exception could be justified. Just one, just enough. And then I saw how that single exception became precedent. How precedent became habit. How habit became identity. Power did not corrupt through pleasure. It corrupted through fatigue. Jesus finally spoke again. Every temptation you face, he said, will sound like wisdom. Evil rarely announces itself. It persuades. I felt exposed. Then he said something that stripped away my final defense. You will never be free from these choices, he said, not because you are weak, but because leadership is moral pressure without rest. I realized then that righteousness is not a destination, it is maintenance. The vision shifted again. I saw schools transformed, not with grand budgets but with courage, teachers allowing questions, students encouraged to challenge respectfully. Critical thinking treated not as rebellion but as patriotism. I saw courts where justice was slow but honest, where the powerful waited as long as the poor, where the law regained dignity through consistency. I saw leaders admitting mistakes publicly, not theatrically, sincerely. Trust deepened, not because perfection was achieved, but because deception ended. Then I saw something even more fragile. I saw Muslims protecting Christians during prayer, Christians protecting Muslims during fasting, elders listening to youth, youth honoring elders. Not because differences disappeared, but because loyalty to conscience overrode fear. This, Jesus said, is unity of the soul, not alliance of convenience. He showed me that external partners would come and go. Agreements would rise and fall. But a nation that does not betray itself cannot be purchased. Finally, he showed me myself again. Not victorious, not celebrated, but awake, aware of my own capacity for failure. Do not ask to be spared temptation, he said. Ask to recognize it. The vision faded slowly, not with thunder, with responsibility. When the images faded, I was not returned to comfort. I was returned to myself. There was no applause, no reassurance, no promise that everything would be fine if I simply believed hard enough. What remained was something heavier and more honest. Responsibility. Jesus did not tell me what to do. He did not hand me a program, a doctrine, or a political formula. Instead, he exposed a truth that is uncomfortable for anyone who holds power. Power does not remove moral responsibility. It multiplies it. He showed me that leadership is not a moment of glory, but a daily exposure of one's inner life. Every weakness becomes consequential. Every rationalization becomes contagious. I saw that the greatest danger to Burkina Faso was not invasion, nor sanctions, nor poverty. It was the slow erosion of conscience disguised as realism. I was shown that a tyrant is not born when someone chooses evil openly. A tyrant is born when someone chooses convenience repeatedly and calls it necessity. When fear is justified as prudence. When silence is defended as strategy. I understood then that the line between protector and oppressor is not crossed in one dramatic step. It is crossed one quiet evening at a time, when a leader convinces himself that just this once is acceptable. Jesus spoke again, and his words were not religious. They were human. You cannot serve justice and your own preservation at the same time, he said. One will always demand sacrifice. That sentence stayed with me more than any commandment. He did not say power was evil. He did not say authority was wrong. He said something far more precise. Power must be purified constantly, or it will purify nothing. I was shown my own errors, not exaggerated, not dramatized, small decisions, moments when I delayed truth to avoid conflict, moments when I listened more to strategy than to conscience, moments when I told myself that timing mattered more than honesty. I wanted to defend myself again. I am only human, I thought. And that was exactly the point. Leadership does not remove humanity, it tests it. I was not shown myself as a hero. I was shown myself as a man in process, a man capable of courage and capable of failure, a man who must choose again every morning which side of himself will lead. Jesus did not ask me to claim success. He asked me to reject self-deception. You will fail at times, he said, but do not lie about it. Repentance is not humiliation, it is alignment. That word struck me deeply. Alignment, not perfection, not purity theater. Alignment between what I say, what I do, and what I allow. I saw that ethical leadership is not loud, it is consistent. It is the quiet refusal to normalize what should never be normal. It is the willingness to lose advantage rather than lose direction. Then I was shown Africa, not as a continent of despair, but as a continent of unresolved promise. I saw nations rich in land and culture, poor only in trust. I saw leaders trapped between external pressure and internal fragility. I saw how easily foreign interests exploit division that already exists. But I also saw something hopeful. I saw that Africa does not lack intelligence. It lacks permission to tell the truth without fear. I asked silently what role I had in this. Jesus answered without drama. Begin where you are, he said. With what you control, with what you refuse. I understood that I could not save Burkina Faso alone, but I could refuse to be one more man who helped it decay. I asked for blessing then, not for victory, not for longevity. I asked for clarity. I asked that when temptation comes disguised as wisdom, I would recognize it. That when fear comes dressed as strategy, I would question it. That when silence seems safer than truth, I would remember the cost. I asked for Africa, that our leaders would fear betraying their people more than losing favor. That our youth would learn to ask questions without being punished for curiosity. That our religious differences would become sources of humility, not weapons of division. Jesus did not promise outcomes. He promised presence. And that, I understood, was enough. When I woke, there was no lingering glow in the room, no warmth left behind, no voice echoing in my ears. Morning arrived, as it always does, quietly, without ceremony, without asking permission. The light crept in through the window. The sounds of the city returned. Somewhere, people were already working. Somewhere, children were already awake. The world had not changed overnight. Burkina Faso was still facing the same pressures, the same dangers, the same expectations. The weight of responsibility was still there, waiting for me. But I had changed. Not in certainty, in awareness. I did not wake with answers. I woke with fewer excuses. The dream did not give me confidence. It took something away instead. It removed the comfortable illusion that history moves on its own, that systems collapse without consent, that leaders are merely trapped by forces larger than themselves. That illusion is tempting, and it is false. I do not share this experience to claim special favor. I do not share it to suggest that I am wiser, purer, or more righteous than anyone else. I share it because it stripped me bare of the lies I sometimes tell myself to survive the day. It reminded me that institutions decay only after conscience decays. That injustice persists only after it is tolerated. That power becomes dangerous not when it is seized, but when it is no longer questioned. They are not prisoners of inevitability. Nations do not fall only because of enemies at their gates. They fall because truth becomes negotiable, because conscience is postponed until tomorrow, because ordinary people learn to survive by shrinking their integrity instead of defending it. They fall when lying becomes routine, when silence becomes normal, when outrage becomes inconvenient. Burkina Faso does not need perfect leaders. It has never needed them. It needs honest ones. Leaders who understand that authority is not a shield against judgment, but an exposure to it. Leaders who know that development without dignity is only decoration, bright on the surface, hollow underneath. A nation can build roads and still lose its soul. It can grow its economy and still starve its people of meaning. It can appear stable and still be rotting from within. To my Muslim brothers and sisters, to my Christian brothers and sisters, and to all who believe in God in their own way, I say this with humility. Faith that does not defend human dignity is empty. Prayer that does not produce courage is incomplete. Belief that does not restrain power becomes superstition. Faith was never meant to anesthetize the conscience. It was meant to awaken it. To my fellow leaders across the Sahel and across Africa, I speak not as a teacher, but as a man still learning. The greatest danger we face is not instability. It is the temptation to preserve ourselves at the cost of our people. History is not impressed by how long we stay in office. It does not remember the size of our motorcades or the titles on our doors. It remembers whether we protected conscience or betrayed it. To those watching from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and from around the world, especially those who care deeply about Jesus and about leadership, understand this. Africa is not asking to be saved. Africa is asking to be respected. We do not need saviors. We need partners who value truth more than access, who value dignity more than advantage, who understand that real friendship does not begin with extraction but with respect. I do not know what the future holds. Anyone who claims they do is lying to you or to themselves. I know only this: the future will not be shaped by dramatic declarations or heroic speeches. It will be shaped by daily choices, by what we tolerate when it would be easier to look away, by what we refuse when refusal carries a cost, by what we are willing to lose in order to remain aligned with what is right. Every morning, I wake with the same question before me, not as a slogan, not as a performance, as a burden. Will I serve power today, or will I serve justice? There is no final victory in this struggle, no moment when one can rest and say the work is complete. Leadership does not offer that comfort. Conscience does not grant retirement. Each day, I must choose again. And so must we all. If these words have stirred something in you, not admiration but reflection, then remain in this space. Speak. Question. Share your thoughts with others who are listening, not to argue, not to dominate, but to understand. And if you wish to continue walking alongside these reflections, quietly and without spectacle, you are welcome to remain here. Because each day I wake, and I must choose again. There is no final triumph, only vigilance or surrender.